You ever notice how Pokemon always say their own names? Yet whenever you encounter Mewtwo in the games, it always says Mew instead of Mewtwo. It happens in Red and Blue, it happens in the Gen 3 remakes Fire Red and Leaf Green, and it even happens in Pokemon X and Y. I think we all know the answer. Mewtwo is a clone of the original Pokemon Mew, and Pokemon always say their name, with Mewtwo just being the nickname the scientists gave it, but still, it's a very cool example of attention to detail. That said, it is pretty darn disrespectful to keep calling it Mewtwo to its face. Like, imagine if you had a human child named, I don't know, Amber, and then you cloned her, and then you started calling the clone Amber too. That would be pretty messed up, right?
They call me Amber too, but I'm still really Amber.
Internet, welcome to Game Theory, where we're just like Nintendo, constantly looking to make money off of old franchises. I mean, their first major Pokemon announcement of 2019 came out on January 1st, and it was a new Pokemon movie in the form of an old Pokemon movie. 20 years after its initial release, Mewtwo Strikes Back has now been transformed into Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution. A CGI reboot with a name that's only slightly better than Mewtwo Strikes Back Revengeance and Mewtwo Strikes Back Mew 3. And I would be wagging my finger at Nintendo for the shameless retread if it wasn't for the fact that they had also just released Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, two games that straight up remake the campaign from the originals. Easy cash grabs abound. But of course, I had to play them. It is my job after all. It's a tough job, but someone's gotta do it. So of course, while playing through them, I was on the lookout for what new additions to the series they decided to slip in with this revisit to where it all began. Lesser emphasis on combat? Check. No random battles? Great. Girl who repeatedly pelts your face with Pokeballs? What? You see, in these new games, after you visit the Cerulean Cave and capture Mewtwo, you encounter a trainer by the name of Green. Her introduction to the player is, well, definitely not typical. The encounter starts with her throwing a Pokeball at the player. She quickly tries to play this off like an accident by saying, "Oh whoops, you're not a Pokemon, and it's dark in here." Fair enough, I too sometimes get startled and throw my balls at people in self-defense. But then she becomes angry when she learns that you've already captured Mewtwo. She battles you, and then after you win, she throws another Pokeball at you, and another, and another, and another. 5 times she tries to capture you in a Pokeball. All this while making the odd suggestion of, why don't you become one of my Pokemon together with Mewtwo? Think about it, okay? Listen, the first time you smack me with a Pokeball might just be an accident. By the time this girl gets to her 5th Pokeball thrown at me, I'm gonna start wondering if there might be something slightly off about her. It's the sort of weird moment that tells me that there's something else going on here. So who is this girl? Who is Green? And what is her connection with Mewtwo? Well, it's my belief, as well as the belief of online theorist Ricky Grunt on Reddit, that Green is a clone. A girl who was raised in a test tube by scientists, all as a part of the Mewtwo project. Now, that might seem like a lot to assume from just a few lines of dialogue and a little bit of weird behavior, but the evidence is definitely out there. The birth of Mewtwo was a 10-minute origin story that served as a prequel to the events of Pokemon's first major motion picture, Mewtwo Strikes Back, and it was created to be part of the movie's US theatrical debut. Now, if you originally saw that movie in theaters and don't remember anything happening before the movie about a Mewtwo origin, well, you're not wrong. The whole thing was cut prior to release, and the only pre-show that happened before the movie was the short Pikachu's Vacation. Then, when the movie came out on home video, a heavily cut-down version that reduced its runtime from 10 minutes to 2 minutes made it into the final edit. It wasn't until 2001 that the full 10-minute prequel finally got a release without any cuts. The fittingly dubbed, uncut story of Mewtwo's origin. So that merits the question, what was too hot for Pokemon to handle? What was so controversial and traumatizing that it got cut not just once, but twice in movie releases? Oh, it's no big deal. It was just the story of the death of a little clone girl. here's the story as told by that animated short film. Mr. Fuji, the guy who hangs out at the Pokemon house in Lavender Town and is best known for giving out Pokeflutes to trainers needing to get some Snorlaxes out of their way, was part of a cloning project to resurrect the Pokemon Mew. However, Mr. Fuji's motives for joining the project were a bit more personal than he'd let on, as he wanted to use the same cloning technology being used to resurrect Mew to also resurrect his own deceased daughter, Amber.
I must see my little girl smile again. Please let my theories be true.
Mr. Fuji here sounds a lot like me every time I release a theory. Well, except for the whole dead daughter thing. Now, obviously, in the short, the Mew clone is named Mewtwo, but it's not the only clone we see. Charmander 2, Squirtle 2, and Bulbasaur 2 are also there. Rounding out that roster of terrible twos, though, is Amber 2, who, in case you haven't noticed the pattern by now, is the clone of Mr. Fuji's daughter, Amber. Amber 2 is somehow able to communicate telepathically with Mew and all the other Pokemon clones. All 5 live in an unconscious state, trapped inside their own minds as they're waiting to be fully born. But because Amber 2 has the memories of the original Amber, she's able to share her memories of the outside world with Mewtwo and the other Pokemon clones, teaching them about life in the outside world.
I call this my remember place. This is where I used to live.
What is that?
That's the sun. It makes the whole world bright, and it keeps us warm all day.
For Pokemon that have never gotten to know life outside of a cloning tank, Amber's memories are the only taste they ever get of the real world. It's actually a really touching story. Until, of course, they decide to crush your childhood by teaching a theater full of kids about their own mortality. You see, Charmander 2, Squirtle 2, and Bulbasaur 2 don't survive the cloning incubation process, and ultimately fade out of existence. Which, let's just be honest with ourselves, is children's movie shorthand for those dead test tube clones gonna be flushed down the toilet. But if that weren't bad enough, the movie then does the unthinkable. Amber 2 fades as well.
Thank you for caring about me. And don't cry, Mewtwo. You're alive, and life is wonderful. Life is wonderful.
Which just leaves Mewtwo alone and in the darkness, the only survivor, sad and angry at the loss of his only 4 friends.
Please, Amber, come back. Don't go, please.
Watching this short story, it's really hard to think of Mewtwo as the villain ever again. So why bring this story up and sadistically torture viewers with what might have been the most heart-wrenching story in all of Pokemon canon? Well, I believe that Amber 2 from the movie is Green in these new games, Mr. Fuji's daughter, who was raised during the Mewtwo project, but unlike Amber 2 in the movie, Green actually survived. In the original Pokemon games, the Pokemon Mansion on Cinnabar Island is the first place that the player learns about the existence of Mewtwo through a series of journal entries. In the updated Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, though, you'll find more than just journal entries hidden there. Deep in the basement, there's a large tank. It's empty. According to the game text, quote, "It's a large container made of thick glass. It looks as if something has been beating on it over and over from the inside." And if that hint was too subtle for what's going on here, if you have Mewtwo as your companion when you're visiting the tank, you'll get this unique text. Mewtwo is staring ahead at the large machine. If Mew's with you, it's a similar story. Mew is staring quietly at the large machine. Given that this is clearly the tank where Mew was cloned and where Mewtwo was born, it would make sense that both of them would have a personal connection to this particular location. But here's the mind blow. Just past Mewtwo's cloning tank, you'll find 4 smaller cloning tanks, which precisely matches the number of additional clones that we saw in that Mewtwo origin short. A tank for Mewtwo, plus 4 more tanks for Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur, and the human girl, Amber. And remember, these cloning tanks weren't a part of the original game. The developers went out of their way to add these very specific details back in. And while the Green encounter in Cerulean Cave is certainly memorable, it isn't the only time that she's mentioned. If you go back and re-battle Gym Leader Blaine on Cinnabar Island, he'll have dialogue that specifically mentions her. Ha! Well done returning here to my gym. By the way, I've been hearing an interesting rumor floating around recently. You wouldn't happen to know a young lady named Green, would you? Well, it's not as though I really know the whole story anyway. And that's it. that's all he has to say. It's one of those weird half clues that storytellers give you midway through the story to tell you that something fishy is going on, that Blaine has some sort of connection to this mysterious girl, but without them wanting to spell it out for you. But what could the connection be? Well, earlier Blaine says this: "You're the one who retrieved the key to this gym from the Pokemon Mansion. Did you see anything interesting while you were in there? That place still holds the remnants of my old friend's research." When he refers to the remnants of research, he's of course talking about the cloning tanks and journal entries. As for his old friend, well, that would be Mr. Fuji. This connection is made clear not in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but rather in Fire Red and Leaf Green. The fame checker description for the Cinnabar gym photo explicitly says, quote, "It's a photo of Blaine and Mr. Fuji. They're standing shoulder to shoulder with big grins." This matches up with what we know from the anime. Remember, in the Mewtwo origin story, it's Mr. Fuji who's the lead researcher trying to bring back his deceased daughter Amber. So if Green is indeed this universe's version of Amber 2, Mr. Fuji's clone child with a connection to Mewtwo, it would make sense for Blaine, as a friend of Fuji's, to have a vague understanding of who, or more accurately what, Green actually is. Green has 3 distinctive features that are explained by her being genetically and psychically linked to Mewtwo. First, there's the fact that she knows where Mewtwo is, let alone that she even knows he exists in the first place. Remember, Mewtwo is a secret project, a Pokemon mega weapon. To everyone else in the world, including your rival, they only know vague rumors, saying things like, "There's talk going around about some crazy strong-looking Pokemon being spotted." If Green became friends with Mewtwo through her telepathic communication when they were both gestating clones, just like we saw Amber 2 do, that would explain why she's so enthusiastic about wanting to catch Mewtwo, why she wants to be reunited with her friend. It's also why she's so upset when she finds out that the player beat her to the punch. Secondly, there's the fact that she has both of the Mega Stones for Mewtwo, which makes 0 sense for just a random trainer to possess. As a Pokemon who was lab created, items related to Mewtwo would also have to be artificially created. Green then would have had to have obtained them from someone connected to the Mewtwo project. And wouldn't you know it, but in the Pokemon Adventures manga, Blaine not only knows Fuji, but worked on the Mewtwo project, going so far as in the X and Y arc of that series, possess and use Mewtwo's Mega Stones. That in and of itself isn't conclusive of anything. The Pokemon Adventures manga follows its own canon. However, it does have a reputation for being more faithful to the spirit of the original games than the anime. According to the original creator of Pokemon, Satoshi Tajiri, quote, "This is the comic that most resembles the world I was trying to convey." And so if Blaine canonically has had the Mega Stones in the past, and in this universe actively knows about Green, well then we have ourselves a little line of possession for those very specific and very rare items. And lastly, we come full circle to the odd behavior that started this whole theory in the first place. The fact that she wants to catch you, the player, and tries throwing Pokeballs at you repeatedly. Seems like eccentric behavior for your typical human, but remember what happened with Amber 2 in the movies. If Amber and Mewtwo did indeed have a psychic link during the cloning process, that would mean that Green's first real friend would have been a Pokemon that she might have even had full-on conversations with, which, for an impressionable young girl with a troubled past, might blur the line between human and Pokemon, to the point where she actually thinks that she can capture a trainer if she uses enough Pokeballs. Mewtwo even struggles with the same question in the anime origin story, where Amber 2 seems not to care about the distinction between human and Pokemon.
Pokemon? Person? What are those? Which one am I?
Maybe it makes a difference to you if you're a Pokemon or a person, but not to me.
I don't know about you, but to me that sounds an awful lot like the laugh of a girl who might grow up one day to throw Pokeballs at people trying to catch them all. As for solid, conclusive proof, well, we might just have to wait until Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution to come out this summer. I wouldn't be surprised to see him mixing some of this lore into that one. But hey, that's just a theory.
Greetings, Theorists. The gates beckon you. Are you prepared to meet him? 3 symbols you must find. 7 plus 7 plus 7 must be eliminated, and the path to Ra shall open. Journey now to the theoristgateway.com. He awaits.